Right, once again, this is one of those videos that I've been meaning to do for well over a year. This is the time of year when we tend to keep our bikes in the garage because riding conditions aren't optimal. And it's the time of year where we tend to turn our mind and our attention on our bikes to maintenance, fitting parts, modifications, that kind of thing. And I think there's barely a day goes past where I don't receive an email or a message asking me about the obvious things like socket sets, torque wrenches, screwdrivers, spanners, the obvious things that spring to mind when you start talking about mechanical maintenance. But one thing I never get asked about are those peripherals, the little things, those bits and pieces that you don't realise that you need until you're doing a job and suddenly you realise you need them. For the most part, they're cheap, inexpensive items, things that you should have in your garage, but things that quite often people don't have in the garages, and the things that can make the difference between a good job and an okay job, or they can stop the job altogether if you don't have them. And I think we all know how frustrating it is when you're doing some work on your bike. You realise that you don't have something with you that you need, and the whole day becomes a nightmare while you drive around various motor factors or whatever trying to source that one elusive little item. And then when you do find it, you end up paying through the nose. I always think it's far better to be prepared for these things and have them on stock. They're not things that you're going to be using every day or every week. They're probably not things that you're going to be using every month. They may even sit there for years without being used, but when the day comes that you do need them, they are there. And you've covered yourself for all eventualities. Now, I called this video Top 10 Things You Didn't Know You Need Until You Need Them. In actual fact, there's 12 things, but top 12 things that you need that you didn't know you need didn't sound right. So I called it Top 10 Things. With a little bit of forward planning and a bit of research, you can get these things extremely cheaply. I found Amazon a fantastic resource when I'm looking for this sort of stuff. And just £2 spent here or £5 spent there can soon build up a really useful armoury for the DIY mechanic. Now, I'm not going to do a full-blown review on all these items because most of them are self-explanatory. I'm just going to whiz through them, and we'll start with what I consider to be the most important thing you could possibly have at your disposal. A Haynes manual. I've had one of these for just about every vehicle I've ever owned, and I know I keep banging on about Haynes manuals and mentioning them all the time, but I assure you I don't get any commission or anything like that from the sale of them. It's simply one of those publications that is invaluable when you're working on your bike. We've all been in that position where we want to do a job but we've got no idea how we go about doing it, and you then spend wasted hours working out how something comes apart, how it works, how to do what it is you set about doing, and then how to put it all back together again. These manuals take all the guesswork away from that. And even though I don't always need mine, I always have it at hand in case I get stuck. Now, I've seen the use of Loctite or thread lock increase by manufacturers substantially over the last couple of decades. And it seems to have got to the point nowadays where there's virtually nothing you can take off the bike that doesn't require thread lock. Now, the problem with this is that it is a sort of a glue which remains in the thread, and if you don't clean it out before replacing your fasteners, it will eventually lead to a failure of a bolt or the stripping of a thread. A decent tap and die set is a must-have item. We tend to think of these as being a tool for creating a thread in a hole when you're actually fabricating something, but that is just one of the uses for it. It is the safest and most efficient way of cleaning Loctite out of internal threads and off external threads before reassembly. And it doesn't matter what level of maintenance you do to your own bike, you are going to need one of these. For what they are and the use that you get out of them, because I use mine all the time, they're not particularly expensive. A decent set costing between £50 and £30, and if looked after they will quite literally last you a lifetime. They're very high quality items, even the low priced ones. Now, alongside a tap and die set, obviously you're going to need to replace that Loctite when you replace whatever fastener it is that you're working on. Again, it's not particularly expensive, but this is a safety product. Generally speaking, you should only be using a medium strength Loctite, the type that can easily be removed using hand tools. And generally speaking, that is denoted by a blue colour. Just check the instructions before purchasing it. Now, working on your bike's electricery. One of the bikers' favourite pastimes is swapping indicators, swapping tail lights, that kind of thing. Now, where we can, we all look for plug and play solutions, but things don't always work out the way that you'd hoped. For just a couple of quid, you can get a pack of these standard red bullet connectors. That's 50 male and 50 female. These and the next 2 or 3 items that I'm going to show you are invaluable when you're doing those kind of modifications. You don't always need them, but when it comes a time that you do need them, you're really glad that you have them in. And of course, to accompany these, you're going to need a crimping tool. Once again, these are relatively cheap. This is one of the basic ones that we're all familiar with. There are some more upmarket versions, but to be quite honest, this one does the job. It'll cut your wire, strip it, and crimp your bullet fitting on. Now, these kind of fittings are an automotive standard. You don't see them as much as you used to from the factory, but they are still used. And on a bike, they can be a little bit vulnerable at times. They can get pulled apart, but more importantly, they can suffer from water ingress, especially on a motorbike. Now, this heat shrink, the kind of stuff that you've seen me use on several occasions, again, really cheap. You can either buy it on the roll, or you can buy little packs of assorted sizes, with each size cut to a useful length. These are an excellent way of solidifying those joints with the bullet connectors when you make them. They can also be handy for bunching together a collection of wires to tidy your work up when you've finished. It helps to protect your wiring from the elements and stops parts from being pulled apart. It gives your work a more professional finish, showing that you take pride in your bike. Next up, grommets. These are self-explanatory. Again, not expensive for a multi-pack like this, and probably out of all of the items that I've shown you here, these are the ones that I use least of all. But when you need one, you need one. I've got some modifications coming up on a couple of the bikes in the near future where these are going to be invaluable. They're great for allowing you to pass wires through pieces of metal like mudguards while still providing a degree of water resistance to areas that you don't want to get wet. But the main use is to stop wires from chafing against metal parts. Again, for what they cost, get some and stick them in your garage. Now, cable ties, again, not expensive. You can buy them in multi-packs. Now, the obvious use, of course, is for securing and tidying up cables. But that's not all that they can be used for. They have a multitude of uses, even if it's just for temporarily tying parts out of the way while you're working on your bike. Now, going back to just using them for electrical purposes, in conjunction with self-adhesive cable tie mounts, these are a great way of tidying your wiring looms up on your bike, especially work that you've done yourself, and keeping it out of harm's way. Now, we're all prone to blowing a fuse from time to time, especially when we're working on our bikes and we get our wires crossed. I know I've done it. It seems obvious, and it is a really simple thing, but a lot of people are so used to fuses and electrical systems on bikes being so reliable, they don't have any spares. They're cheap, and you should have a little box like this in your toolkit. I'll say no more. Now, last but certainly not least, grease and anti-seize compound. These are two staple products that any DIY mechanic should have in his toolkit. We all know why you should have them, and we all know what you should use them for, but it's amazing how many people don't have them. Now, I know as far as all of these items go, some people will think it's really obvious and they'll already have them. But especially for those who are watching my videos because they are new to DIY bike maintenance, I hope this video will give you some insight into those things that you don't realise you need, but one day will need. And maybe getting a little collection of these bits together now will save you a headache in the future. Now, once again, thanks for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and you found it useful. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to this channel. Now, I will try my best to find a list of links for these products somewhere on Amazon and post them up on the video. They might not be there immediately because it will take me some time to collate that list together, but I'll get it on as soon as I can. In the meantime, I will be back next week, so until then, ride safely and I will see you soon.